Hello and welcome to Madhouse UK podcast. This is the podcast that used to be called the Manticore podcast and Comics in the Attic. Now, what happened was back at the end of 2019, I decided to do something with thousands of comics that had accumulated in my attic. And I won't bore you with the whole story of it, but kind of while sorting through them and pricing them, I fell back in love with comics again and then thought, well, I've got a hell of a lot of comics, why don't I open a comic shop? Because it just so happens that I have a shop on the side of my house that previous to that was being used as a business office, but I thought, well, why not turn it back into a shop again? So that's what I did. I spent the beginning part of the year kind of getting things ready. I had to buy a lot of additional stock because although I had the better part of 20,000 or so comics, something like that, 30,000, a lot of comics anyway, a whole loft full. I still wasn't enough because obviously they were comics I'd collected and I'd had in a previous shop that I'd owned, but they weren't the sort of cross-section you need to appeal to a wide comic audience. So I had to buy some stock in, things that I wouldn't normally collect, and invested a fair bit of money in the shop and in the stock, and then opened just after the last lockdown finished, the COVID-19 lockdown. So May, something like that, 2020, I forget what it was, but we've spent a few months building the shop up. Things are going great. We're very pleased with it. We've got some really exciting customers, interesting customers who I enjoy interacting with, and we have a good laugh in the shop, talking to people and sharing our interests. And it is also nice to make a few bucks, no denying that. As the year went on, things seemed to be getting better and better. People were putting in more and more pull lists. We were enjoying the way it was building, and we thought it had a good future. And then COVID-19 and the UK government did their thing and put us into a second lockdown. Now, I personally don't think comics can count as non-essential items, but the normal person probably would. So we obviously have had to shut down during the second lockdown, and fingers crossed that will be over on December the 2nd. Until then, what was I going to do? Well, we've been sorting our collection and getting things in order and doing some changes to make things look better. But there's only so much of that you can do, listing a lot of stuff on eBay. So what I thought I would do is come on here and talk about comics like I used to with the old Comics in the Attic, because at the beginning of the year I did a podcast where I talked about what I was discovering in the attic. Remember, I hadn't looked at these comics for decades, so I almost didn't really know what I had, and some of it was leftover stock from a previous shop, so I was enjoying looking through that and finding things, but that's all sort of in the past now. The shop's open, business has changed. I thought I would review some comics that I've had in recently, and ones that have kind of stirred things up a little bit, and if people like this and enjoy watching it, then I'll do a bit more of this in future. But I've got 3 comics I picked out that I thought I would review today, and they're all current in different ways, but some of them you'll like, some of them you won't, but let's have a chat about it and see what we've got. So first up, Punchline. This is Punchline. There you go. And Punchline was introduced this year. She is a support character in the Batman franchise. She is actually a replacement for Harley Quinn in a way. Punchline is Joker's new sidekick henchman, and there's been a series of comics in the Batman Detective Comics books, which eventually led to Batman, as he usually does, beating the Joker, and Punchline was arrested and captured. And this comic begins with her on trial for being an associate of the Joker, being complicit in his crimes is the gist of it. Now, she's obviously committed a lot of crimes herself, but as the book says, it's much more serious for her in Gotham City that she is seen as working with the Joker, because if she's been doing that, then she's considered in the book part and parcel of his crimes, because they're not sure she's insane, like they think Joker is. She is, by the way, I think, but they haven't established that yet, so they think she'll get the death penalty, and that is the kind of striking way that the book begins. So I kind of browsed through it. I won't show you too much, but I will show you some bits. So give you an idea of what the art is like. If you just have a look at that. And you can see that, perhaps in future I'll scan pages, but for the moment you can see the art's pretty good. I like it. It's quality art. The book is written by James Tynion IV, and I do enjoy his writing. Everything he writes seems to be pretty clever. He's got a good idea for pacing. He understands characters well. And reading through this book, I think I enjoyed it. It's very wordy. Now, I don't mean to sound like a thicko, right? Sometimes wordy is great. Other times you want to see some action. This book spends a lot of time setting the scene, but then look, it probably has to, doesn't it? You don't know a lot about Punchline. James Tynion wants to set up quite a complicated character and some interesting sideline characters, which he does. So it ties in with the Bat universe, kind of off to the side, but it's definitely there in the Bat universe. A lot of mentions, obviously, of the Joker. Some of the side characters are in the Batman family, if you like, or associated tangentially with the Batman family. And I don't want to spoil it too much for you, but the gist of it is Punchline has clearly decided that the way not to get the death penalty or be convicted is to use social media to make herself into an anti-hero or a good guy. And the book has her set about doing that, using social media and blogging to set herself up as the hero of the piece, a tragic victim of the Joker, suffering from PTSD and other personality problems, rather than being to blame herself. Now, we've seen this before. It's been used in the Joker himself. We've had this in the Joker, The Dark Knight Returns, with the Joker's interaction, famous graphic novel. The Joker's interaction with the psychiatrist, where for a while it seems like he might be at least the psychiatrist thinks he might be a victim. He clearly isn't, and I think the book is taking a similar line with Punchline. But you don't know, because it could be that she's doing all of this, and underneath that is another layer of she is a victim. I don't know how it's going to present it. Hopefully not, because I think broadly, these days I like to see villains stay villains. I think it's been used too much. This, we're all good guys underneath kind of. It's not comic book, right? It might be some truth to it in the real world, but in the comic books, I think you like to see some of your bad guys stay bad guys. Now, I've got no problems with this book so far. It's very wordy. Great pages full of blocks of text, because it follows a young teenage boy who kind of gets drawn into her defence of herself. She sets up a fake video blog where she makes out she's been following the Joker to sort of expose him, and then gets caught up in it. And so they have to tell you all the bits from her previous blog posts, and there's a lot of text there. But you do it's an interesting storyline, because I think they're trying to show how people can get caught up with online conspiracy and believe it. Now, I hope that doesn't go the obvious line. I hope it doesn't become very obvious with current politics, because these things can happen, but they can happen on both sides of the political spectrum. And I hope it doesn't get drawn into politics, but it hasn't so far. And so far I found it quite an interesting read. And once you get past the stuff about the blog and you get the gist of it, she's kind of tied this teenage boy and many, many others all over the world into her fake tragic story. Once you get past that, it gets quite interesting. I mean, you begin to see that she is playing a game, and she's playing a game because she's a genuine sidekick of the Joker. Whether later on it will turn out she's playing a game, but beneath that she's a victim as well, I don't know. But it's interesting. I really enjoyed it. I didn't love it. Now, I'm not gonna rave about it. I thought it was a good, solid start. She's an interesting character. She's got a lot of potential. Excuse me. For the future. I like Punchline anyway, because I think the costume's great. The colour scheme's very simple. These kind of purple and black colours, reminiscent of a certain period of Catwoman's past, but that kind of overdone makeup, clownish almost, with her kind of red cheeks and that. I like it. It's good. It's very interesting. I don't know where it goes from here, and I'm not quite sure if this is a one-off book or if there's a sequel, because I've seen it said that it's a one-off, but then I've seen other people talking about where she goes from here, so I'm sure there's going to be more. I guess they're just waiting to see how this sells. I would recommend that you read it, particularly if you like the Batman universe, particularly if you like stories with a bit of depth that take a bit of time to develop. Now, if you like kind of wham bam, rob the bank, catch the villain, and there's nothing wrong with that, I love some of those comics, this one might not be for you. But it's a little bit cerebral if you like. Not saying that in a snobby way, because sometimes that is boring as you like, but I thought this one was pretty good. Okay, moving on to the next one, which is Crossover. Just open it up and I'll show it to you. Right, I keep everything bagged and boarded. So this is Crossover. There you go. And Crossover is a Donny Cates book. Not normally a massive fan of Donny Cates. Don't hate his work, but not an enormous fan. But this I thought was very clever. And one of the criticisms you sometimes hear about from certain people about comic books at the moment is they've gone a bit woke. They can't help but kind of bash you in the face with woke and left wing politics, and wherever your position on the political spectrum is, I think we all read comics as escapism. We don't mind seeing ideas tested in comics in a clever way, but you don't want to feel like it's just being smashed at you all the time. And that's probably even less appealing if it's not your politics. Now, this book does that a little bit, but not too much. For instance, the bad guys in it are kind of, at least in this book, are kind of fundamental right-wing religious types who are very judgmental and very unforgiving. We've seen that villain a million times, haven't we? And don't often really see, unless they're kind of a half-drunk Irish vicar, we don't often see them as the good guys. It's a bit sad, really, because I don't think it represents the world very well. There are some good and some bad, like there are everything else. But never mind. I guess Donny Cates couldn't resist that kind of approach. So without wanting to give too much of the book away, the gist of it is that it's a kind of a real-world setting. There's no heroes in this world. But then suddenly, one day, all the villains and heroes that have ever existed in any comic books appear over one city and start having a massive fight. And they then get domed in with a force field. And then the world goes on with this still happening. But because of the consequences of that, they don't know why it happened, they can't explain it, but because of the consequences of that, they don't like the idea of costumed heroes and villains very much. The average man, if you like. But there were still comic book fans, and they're the kind of outcasts in this story, as far as I can tell. They go to the comic books and these comic book shops, and these fundamentalist right-wing religious types sort of pick at the outside and jeer at them as they go in and out. And that's all because of this sort of tragedy that's happened as a result of these superheroes and supervillains appearing out of nowhere. Anyway, let me show you some of the art, because I happen to think... Now, have a look at that art there. As you can see, it's pretty solid. I like it. It doesn't detract at all from the story. There's a page I want to show you, because I really like it, but I can't show you because it ruins a kind of a surprise moment in the book that I don't want to spoil for you. But this first comic kind of sets the scene, where you have a look and you see, you get introduced to this world where this thing has happened and where it's still going on under this dome, and these people feel differently about it. And then at the end of the book, you see a little bit more about what's going on, and you get an idea where the book is going to go from there. Now, if you look at the cover, it's got somebody kind of mind being blown by comics. I think the cover's great, and I think the story is very original. It's different. I mean, things like it have been done before, but not quite like this. And it has elements of a few things I've seen in the past, like Who Killed Roger Rabbit, as well as some of the other comics that have toyed with the idea of superheroes in a more real-world setting. I don't know where it goes from here, because it doesn't tell you a lot of this story, but I loved it, and I'm looking forward to the second one. So this is an absolute definite recommend, crossover. We've got some of these in the shop, shameless plug. Not many though, because this is the first print, and these went out of sale very quickly. It's a very hot book, so the first print sold out real quick. And now on to the second print, which we've also got, but the ones everyone wants is the first print. We've got 3 at the moment. Probably within a few days we'll have none. Okay, the last comic that I wanted to review, I'm afraid you can't get. So I'm sorry to tease you with a comic. I'm going to open it though. Okay, so this is called Pandemic, and this is by a gentleman called Richard C. Meyer, who is known on YouTube as Your Boy Zach, and he has a channel called Comic Books Matter, something like that. You'll find it, I'm sure, if you want to look it up. And he is part of a movement called Comicsgate, who believe collectively that comics have gone a bit too political and are pandering too much to the kind of left-wing politics. So they want to take comic books back to a point where that wasn't the case. They get called by people on the left kind of all sorts of names like you would expect. As far as I can see, and I've read a lot of Comicsgate comics, they're just good, solid comics. And this one is something special. So the reason you can't get this is because it was released on Indiegogo. So I'll just have some tea. If you're not watching from England, all the rumours are true. We drink tea a lot. So This one was advertised on, it was promoted on Indiegogo, which is a fundraising platform, and I was one of the backers. Lots of other people backed it too. It's closed now. All of them have gone out to their backers, so you can't get it unless you buy it second hand. And I haven't seen many around second hand, and they're not going to be cheap, I would imagine, because such is the nature of rarity. Now, your boy Zach, or Richard C. Meyer, he kind of thought of this back at the beginning of the pandemic. It popped into his brain, and as is his wont, he produced it. He went on, crowdfunded it, got the money for it, produced it. The art is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I will show you some. Hold on, have a look. It's just absolutely quality. The hero is a young black lady who is a thief, and kind of a high-tech thief, kind of a Catwoman style thief, I suppose, but not a superhero or anything like that, who is breaking into a facility, an office kind of facility, when she's interrupted and she has to hide. And then in come these guys into this meeting and begin talking about this massive global conspiracy to introduce a pandemic. And the first couple of pages just set the scene where she's sitting in there listening. And they go from a very confident, kind of with it together girl to she's actually crying in this cupboard, because what she's realising, I think, what she hears is so massive. These are not nobodies, these are big players. And she has stumbled on this incredible secret. And obviously it's very timely because it plays into some of the conspiracies of the world at the moment. But the comic has a lot of fun with it. So they find her in the... I haven't got COVID, by the way, I've just got a croaky throat. They find her in a cupboard, and where she's hiding, kind of listening to them, and then she manages to break free, and then they chase her. So this all happens on, what, page 4 or 5, where she gets away. And then the entire rest of the book, bar the last page or two, is her running, basically. And it reminded me of the first Transporter movie, because I thought that was innovative at the time, because they made a movie out of basically one massive chase, and that Richard C. Meyer has done that with this book. It is one massive chase. Now, he could have just done it with panel after panel after panel of her running, and, you know, comes across an obstacle, finds a way around it, does a dash through a building, gets followed. This is one massive chase, and each time she tries to find somewhere to hide, the conspiracy's got there first. And she's getting more and more frightened, and more, as all the avenues are closing of escape for her, and she's more and more feeling that she's got nowhere to run. I think it would make such a good movie. I mean, you'd have to develop it a little bit, no doubt, but it's fascinating, really. But what I like the most about it is you don't see this in comics very much. He's tried something different. You know, it's against the standard grain to just make a comic about somebody running. But that's broadly what she does. It's one giant chase scene. Now, he has words in it. He has her talking. And he does that, I think, to break up the chase, because she thinks, she's like, think, so many people, get out of the way. Right, I'm going to go that way, kind of thing. You know, she tells you, she talks to herself, which also serves as a purpose of telling you what's going through her mind. Now, he could have done it with thought bubbles, but I like this approach, actually. It feels more immediate. And so she runs and she runs and she runs, and I'm not going. There's a twist at the end, sort of, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, because I know I've told you can't get this book. But if you live locally, you're absolutely welcome to come and borrow it from me. And I fully recommend that you back things written by Richard C. Meyer, because this is a great book. Now, I liked Crossover, but this is my favourite of the three, and it's just something quite different. Love it. Anyway, that's my 3 comics for today. Now, if you're local, or you just stumble upon this and found it at all interesting, please do let me know if there's something you'd like me to review next time. Absolutely happy to kind of follow your lead. I hope you found this something interesting to listen to during lockdown, or if you're listening to it when lockdown's over, I hope you're looking back at it and thinking, oh, that lockdown was nothing, because that would be a good outcome, I think. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I've been Steve. This has been Madhouse UK. Talk to you soon. I'm gonna turn it off if I ever learn the way to do it.